AI in education, let's watch it unfold.
Okay, I'm not going to play the rest of it, but there are links at the bottom. There's a description of how that was made with AI, and I did you all a favor by not trying to sing to you myself. You would not have appreciated that at all, but because of AI, I'm able to create my own music and even lyrics and sing. And so I did want to share that briefly, just to kind of launch us off today. But we will go ahead and get started. Janet has already introduced me, so I will skip over the introduction. I was previously the Western Region consultant, though, and the new consultant is going to be Stacy Lovedahl, and so you'll get to meet her soon. But I do like to start all of my presentations with this quote, which is often attributed to John Dewey. I know there's some discussion that maybe he didn't say it, but somebody said it in the early 1920s, and that if we teach today's students as we taught yesterday's, we rob them of tomorrow. And I think that is extremely relevant today because in John Dewey's day, of course, they were dealing with lots of different types of situations, like knowledge workers in the 20s. This is kind of the difference between then, the 1920s and the 2020s. Very much different what they were dealing with. Transportation today looks entirely different. Nothing similar hardly to what it was then. And of course, socialization for our children has really changed. Some would argue not for the better, but it is very, very much different. And education has changed in some ways, but in some ways, education really has not kept pace with the change in society. And that's something that AI is forcing us to revisit and to consider now, because it is the society that we're preparing our students for is very different. But our education systems often still look like one teacher in the front of the room, students in rows of desks. They might have computers now, and they might be on them in various lengths of time. But in a lot of ways, our whole methodology of teaching students has not changed. And AI is going to force us to make some changes there. And so we'll talk about that a little bit. But this is a quote from 2020 from a futurist named Peter Diamandis. And he said then that we could expect to experience more progress in the next decade than the previous 100 years combined. So just let that sink in for a minute. And we're 4 years into that decade now, and we've already seen tremendous progress. And this is just a little illustration that I created in November of 2023 on ChatGPT's first birthday. It stopped about right here, but I just started kind of trying to capture the most significant advancements in AI technology that impacted education. And as you can see, I have continued it since then. And something really significant is happening at least every month. Now, if this graph started in 1950 when AI first started, the first half of it would be really boring because something only happened, really significant only happened about every decade. But since 2020, when 2022 when ChatGPT came out, the advancements have just been mind-boggling and remarkable. And so I'll continue that, but there's still, the pace has not slowed down, and it's not set to slow down anytime soon. And so if we start thinking about our students today, this is a AI-generated image of a kindergartner, but our kindergartners are going to graduate around 2037. And with the change in the last 2 months, or the last 2 years rather, it's almost hard to believe or hard to imagine what our kindergartners might be facing and what kind of skills they're going to need to thrive. And I can tell you it's not going to be the same skills that they needed in the 1920s to go into manufacturing and assembly line production and those types of things that were going on in the 1920s. It's going to be very, very different. And so I have gathered a few little statistics here to share with you. This is a recent poll that was done in May of 2024 by Microsoft and LinkedIn, and it was a global study with thousands of participants. And that poll had some really, a lot of good information in it, but I've just pulled out two of the most striking statistics to me that really kind of blew me away. And on the left, you can see there that 66% of the leaders that they surveyed said that they will no longer hire anybody without AI skills. And that is just striking and shocking and really kind of leads me to kind of rethink what we're doing and try to move forward a little more quickly. But 71% also said that they're more likely to hire a less experienced candidate with AI skills than a more experienced candidate without AI skills. And so that is the reality of what our students are going to be when they go into the job market. And again, that's not 2037. That was 2024. That was last May. So imagine how those statistics may change over the next few years. And for our students, especially that are in high school right now, how this is going to impact them going through high school before education catches up. And so I think as educators, we need to be thinking about that. And this is a quote from our state superintendent who said that AI literacy is workforce development. And I couldn't agree more with her. And she's been very supportive of our efforts and has also just been very supportive of workforce development in general. And so this lesson today, we're focusing on the good, the bad, and the ugly of AI, because we do have to take a balanced approach. It's not all sunshine and roses and unicorns and fairy dust. There are some really good things about it, but there's some concerns as well. So we're going to take a look at all three of those. And there's some really ugly things as well. And so we're going to look at all of those, starting with the good though. And so I'm going to go ahead, and some of you may have seen this. I'm just going to kind of talk over it. But this was just very recently. There was a paraplegic,
an incredible moment in tech,
who was able to carry the Olympic flame last week in the Olympics, or the week before, maybe the week before, due to an AI-powered robotic exoskeleton that has been devised. And there's another example of a paraplegic that has a different kind of device that is allowing him to walk again as well. Another really good positive example, which I'm not going to play the video, but this happened very recently also. There was a lawmaker, Jennifer Wexton, a congresswoman who has lost the ability to speak due to a neurological condition that makes it really difficult for her. And she was able to present to Congress using an AI-generated voice on 11 Labs, but not just any AI-generated voice. She was able to clone her own voice using previous speeches that she had made. And so she's been able to regain her voice. I've seen other examples of this being used by people who were deaf, who were born deaf and never had their own voice, have been able to create their own voice. There are examples of this same technology used to help them communicate as well. And then one more example, which I will play this little video because you really have to hear it to see it. But the Be My Eyes, which is an app that helps blind and people to get around, has previously relied on human volunteers that the blind would call, and they would show their camera and they would help them navigate their surroundings. But now they're able to use AI to do that. I'm play a little bit of this clip and let you see that in action.
At the moment.
Yes, it looks like the king is in residence right now. The royal standard flag is flying above Buckingham Palace, which is a signal that the monarch is present. How exciting to be there while the king is home.
Try and tell me exactly what they're doing right now, please.
Right now the ducks are gently gliding across the water. They're moving in a fairly relaxed manner, not in a hurry. Occasionally, one of them will dip its...
Okay, and I'm not going to play the whole clip because of time, but I would encourage you to watch it if you like. But you'll notice that the AI generated voice there is very human-like also, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But it's able to help the blind have more independence by navigating their own surroundings. And then they can also maintain their own privacy. Sometimes they don't want to invite a stranger into their surroundings, into their room, or whatever the case may be. But this app can help them see if it's safe to cross the road. Does their outfit match for the day? Whatever they want, they can use this app and rely on it to help them. And so we will talk a little bit about all of the benefits and risk, but it is a balancing act. And those are all good, positive use cases. And I have several more that I would show in a longer session, but for the time today, I'm going to limit it to those three. But there are a lot of benefits in education. It provides a lot of opportunities for differentiation and personalization. It can help with assessment. There's some cautions around that. I would be very cautious about using it for assigning grades but it can really help save some of that time. I'm a recovering English teacher myself, and I know that I've spent a great portion of my life grading papers. And so as the technology develops more, it will be more dependable and more useful in that use case. It can also help with tutoring, removing barriers for disabilities, increasing with creativity, collaboration, and management and efficiency. And we're going to look at some of those, and then we'll get to the risk a little later on in the presentation. But I will say that the risk of ignoring AI in education are far greater than the risk of implementing it, but it needs to be implemented responsibly. We don't advocate for anybody using AI that does not have AI literacy, some basic education in AI. But in education, we've already kind of looked at some of the positive benefits, so I'm going to kind of skip by that screen. But I want to do a little demonstration for you of the conversational AI, because as excited as I was about AI chatbots when ChatGPT came out, we have to face the fact that it's not super engaging to type your words into a chatbot and then have to read the outcome, particularly for our students. But there's a ChatGPT app now, which you can get on your Android phone, your Apple iPhone, or on your MacBook, which allows you to engage with the AI in a very conversational manner. And there's a more conversational, emotional app that is coming out now, and I don't have access to that yet, but I'm just going to demonstrate briefly for you what this looks like. So on my MacBook, there's not one for a PC yet, but on your iPhone or your Android phone, you can get the same app, and it's actually even a little better on the Android or the iPhone because you don't have to submit your probe. It will just know when you stop speaking to speak back to you. But I'm going to launch the app, and I'm going to demonstrate this conversational mode real briefly for you. And in order to activate it, there's a little headset, looks the same on your phone if you get this on your phone. And so I'm going to activate it, then I'm just going to engage with it for a moment. So bear with me for a second. Hey, ChatGPT, do you remember when you were helping me develop a keynote speech for an AI conference that was Taylor Swift themed?
Yes, I remember that. How is it coming along? Do you need help with any specific part of the speech or integrating more Taylor Swift lyrics?
Well, actually, it's happening right now, and I'd like for you to say hey to the audience.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to virtually join you at this amazing event. I hope you're all ready to shake off any doubts and dive into the exciting world of AI and education.
Okay, thank you. I was going to ask you to do an introduction with Taylor Swift lyrics, but you've done it already. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. If you need any more help or want to add some more Taylor Swift flair to the presentation, just let me know. Enjoy the conference.
Okay, thanks. I actually want you to do something else for me. I want you to help me demonstrate your live translation abilities. I only speak English, so I need you to also play the role of a Spanish speaker who can't speak English, and I need you to translate live for me.
Of course, I can help with that. How would you like to start the conversation? Are there specific topics you'd like to discuss, or should we go with a general introduction?
Let's just do a live conversation. Hi, everybody. How are you today?
Hola a todos. ¿Cómo están hoy?
Okay, and I'm going to pause it now because I'm going to go back to my presentation. I don't want to spend too much time there, but hopefully that was enough to help you kind of see the power of this tool. And I will tell you that it's a tool that I use frequently, particularly when I'm driving, because I spend a tremendous amount of time driving. And in a lot of ways, that's wasted time. I have a car with ancient technology, and I'm not able to do hardly anything on it. And so I engage ChatGPT on my phone when I'm driving, and I use it to help me think through and plan things. but it does have the potential to translate live. And I'll show you a little video demonstration of that in a moment. Kind of keep an eye on the time here, but I do encourage you to download those apps and try it out for yourself if you are not using it on the app. And if you have newcomers in your schools, which I know there are a lot of them in Buncombe County who don't speak English, this can have amazing potential. And I am going to play a little bit of their live demo of this, but I'm going to skip forward to it. He gives a really long description, but all you have to do is say, I only speak English. My friend only speaks Italian. I need you to translate live for us, and it will do it. But I'm going to play it and move forward.
We also here who only speaks Italian. Anytime you hear English, I want you to translate.
Mark, io mi chiedo se le balene potessero parlare, cosa ci direbbero?
Mike, she wonders if whales could talk, what would they tell us?
They might ask, how do we solve linear equations?
Potrebbero chiederci come risolviamo le equazioni lineari.
Sicuramente sì.
Certainly, yes.
Great. Looks like it works.
Okay, and I'm going to just stop at that. But again, it is a great resource, and that works now on the free version. Any one of you can use it on your app. And so I encourage you, if you have students who have difficulty communicating, that could be a tool that you could use to help ease their transition to the United States and to your schools. But I also want to give you a little preview of what's coming. This is rolling out now to Plus users only, and I don't have access to it. But so I'm going to show you just a brief demonstration that Ethan Malik posted online that shows its new abilities that it's going to have to emulate human emotions. And so I'm going to play just a brief little clip of this.
Play along, Ensign. There seems to be some issue with the time-space continuum. We need to travel back in time.
Whoops. Looks like the cosmos needs a little troubleshooting. Shall we aim for the dinosaurs? Or maybe just last weekend?
Actually, I want to aim for ancient Rome. Set the time machine and go.
Choose yourself. You could say, Salve, ego sum, followed by your name.
Come on, you need to help me out here. They seem very high.
Machine bringing wonders from the future.
And
maybe
okay, they're looking bad. Distract them, please, while I try and run.
I'll do my best. Romans, behold this strange device. A time machine bringing wonders from the future.
Okay, and I'm not going to play that whole snippet either because it's a couple minutes long, but he's having it simulate going back in time. And notice how the voice actually changes and emulates emotion. And he did another little clip, which he was asking it to giggle, to sound concerned, to sound scared. And it does a remarkable job of emulating human emotion, which is both really cool and kind of creepy if you think about it. And it does introduce some other concerns with people mistaking it for a human. But this is something that is also coming soon. The ability for that vision capability that I showed you with Be My Eyes to be used in conjunction with the conversational ability will enable people to use ChatGPT as a personal tutor. And in their spring updates, they enlisted Sal Khan and his son to demonstrate that potential. So again, I'm going to move forward into it so that you see only a snippet of it, but I want you to imagine how this might change things for your students that struggle and for teachers to give them a little extra assistance.
OpenAI. Can you find which one is the hypotenuse?
Oh, okay, I see. So I think the hypotenuse is this really long side from A to B. Would that be correct?
Exactly. Well done. Now that you've identified the hypotenuse, can you identify which side is the opposite side to angle alpha?
Okay, well, I mean, you told me earlier that this was the adjacent side, and I know that's the hypotenuse, so I'm guessing that this side, BC, is the opposite side.
Great deduction. That's absolutely correct.
And again, I'm not going to play the whole clip. I encourage you to watch it though, because he just gives some basic instructions at the beginning that it's going to act as a tutor, not give the answers, but help lead the student to the answers. And it is very similar to what Conmigo does, which is the tool that Sal Khan has developed that works alongside with students. But it's a really remarkable potential use case for education. So I wanted to share that. But we do need to get to some of the concerns, because there are several concerns with AI, and we need to always keep a balanced approach. But educators really need to know about these things, because even if schools haven't adopted AI, we know that educators and students are using AI, and sometimes without any instruction or education about it. And so one of the big concerns is data privacy. And everyone needs to understand that anything that you put into these open models, which if you're using a free version, you're using an open model. Anything that you put into those is taken and is added to the data set that it's trained on. And so it is extremely unwise to ever put any kind of personally identifiable information in there about you, and especially about your students. And so, and that includes, you know, at the beginning, it was just typing and maybe copying and pasting in. But another new feature of ChatGPT, the free version, as well as Claude, the free version, is the ability to upload files. And so if you upload files that have PII on them, it's also being added to the database. Same thing using that vision capabilities, where you point your phone at something and ask it to read it, or using that conversational mode. Any of those ways, if you input any kind of PII into the model, it goes into that training database. And I also just like to remind everybody that student ID numbers are personally identifiable information. They identify student on a one-to-one basis, so they're actually one of the most harmful ones to use, and a lot of people don't realize that. And so don't ever input those either. All privacy laws apply as well to AI tools. So FERPA, COPPA, SIPA, all schools need to remind teachers every year what those are. And we should all know that we need to anonymize any information. So there are new capabilities that are amazing. Like you can upload a data set and ask it to create charts and graphs for you. But if that data set has student information in it, it's not anonymized, then you are subjecting that information to potential misuse by a bad actor. And most of the data breaches that we have in schools do come from third-party vendors. And so we need to prioritize data privacy over convenience or coolness. And I know I was one of those teachers who would go to NC Ties or something and see a bunch of cool new apps, and I would go back, unfortunately, and sometimes had my kids sign up for things using it and thought, well, it's a Google sign in, so it's safe. But the truth is that's not the case. And so we need to make sure your district, I'm sure, has clear policies and guidelines for creating student accounts. We need to make sure that all teachers know them and that you follow them, that you're not just adding student accounts to anything that's not approved by your district. Another bad thing about AI is it does have bias inherently in it, because it is a mirror of humanity. It's a mirror of the humans that created the content that it was trained on. And because all humans have bias and all human created content has bias, AI has the potential to be biased. I will say that there's a lot of fine tuning done on the models to train out the bias, and that it has done a remarkable job from November of 22 till now to reduce the incidence of bias, especially racial bias and gender bias. But one of the big concerns now is the political bias. And there is a lot of that can be, and they're doing it, they're trying to be more balanced, but we need to be aware of that. But I would also say that AI didn't create bias. Again, it's just a mirror, it's a reflection. And you're going to get bias also if you're using news reports. You cannot find unbiased news these days. Books, TV, textbooks even. There's bias everywhere. So we need to train our students to be critical of all media. But because AI tends to be trusted more by students and teachers, it seems to kind of amplify that effect. And so we need to critically evaluate all AI generated responses and all media that our students encounter. And with AI in particular, all of the models have a thumbs down icon at the bottom of a chat window that will allow you to give a negative review of a response. And I encourage you to do that. If you ever see anything that you would consider bias, to do that and then type a little explanation, because they really do look at that and they help use it to improve the models and to help fine tune them so that they are less biased. So other ways to mitigate bias: better prompting. Learn how to prompt. Be specific in your prompts. Ask for diverse perspectives, objective responses, and different viewpoints in your response. And then always evaluate it critically and help students develop those same skills. But it is something that we're going to have to teach, practice, model, and repeat with our students. Another concern of educators, this is probably one of the top concerns that I hear still, is that our students are going to depend on it too much. They're going to cheat. But I like to just remind people that we've been here before. In the 1980s, the graphing calculators came out and math teachers even protested over those. I taught during the late 90s and the early 2000s when internet became mainstream, and we were going through the same thing with the internet, trying to teach kids that you can't just go rip off a passage from the internet and paste it into your document and claim that you wrote it, that you had to paraphrase it, you had to cite it. We're going to have to do that same kind of training with our students today. Of course, the internet took about 3 decades to actually be mainstream, and AI, that has happened much more quickly. It is already mainstream, it's already everywhere. And so we haven't had the time to adjust to it like we did to the internet, but it's going to be in some ways the same thing. But because it is ubiquitous now, because it's everywhere, we're going to have to adapt a little faster. And it's going to cause us to have to adapt some of our longstanding attitudes in pedagogy about what is academic integrity and what is cheating. And this is something else I like to point out to teachers, because Stanford University has been studying the incidence of cheating for a long time, for several years. They've been doing a big, massive survey, and they found that cheating is ridiculous. When they asked students if they've engaged in cheating behavior in the last month, 60 to 70% of them before ChatGPT were saying yes, they'd engaged in cheating. But after ChatGPT, they expected that number to skyrocket, and they were shocked to find that it didn't. It actually stayed exactly the same. And so according to their study, and there's one of the best studies out there on the issue, cheating has not increased because of the technology. And so maybe the cheating is a philosophical issue, not a technological issue. And we need to consider the reasons for cheating and how we can address the root causes. But I always like to point this out to educators, because a lot of educators are looking for a solution. They're looking for a quick, easy way to determine if students cheated or not. And the bad news is there is not one. There is not a quick, easy way. There is not an AI detector that will work, that will, with no error rate, or with even a really good, positive, correct rate that will tell you if a student has cheated. And so people who are relying on AI detectors are setting themselves up for some real issues. For one, they have a high frequency of false positives. They are discriminatory against non-native English speakers. That's a big issue. And that has been proven in several research studies. They require a lot of unnecessary work, because if you're using them correctly, you're still needing to read the student's work and evaluating it. And they promote a false assumption that AI is bad. And in fact, in surveys of students who have not used AI now, a lot of them say the reason they won't use it is because they're afraid of being accused of cheating. And so from this other research we looked at earlier, when they go into the job world, that's going to harm them, that they haven't used it. And so we've got to kind of change that dichotomy of thought that using AI is always bad and not using it is good. And so what do we do instead? Conversations about AI use, appropriate use, training students. AI literacy is our best defense against this as well. Collecting writing samples through the year is also a good policy. Reverting to all writing on paper in front of you is a very bad policy, though, because I've heard teachers say that. But if you do that, you're preparing the students to graduate in the 1980s, but you're not preparing them to graduate in 2025 or beyond, because they're not going to be doing that on the job in the job world or in college. But occasionally getting a writing sample is a good idea. But we also have to consider accessibility when we do handwritten work. A lot of students are not capable of doing that, and that always needs to be a consideration. But we also need to just capture students with the process over the product. We need to evaluate their learning, have them reflect on their learning, and we have some more specific examples of that. But thinking of collaboration with AI, similar with working with a tutor, and then have them share about how AI was used. And we've developed some frameworks for that in our guidelines. But also in the time period now, most schools are not having students use AI as part of their schoolwork. And so another good idea is to make your current assignments more AI resistant. If we continue to give the same assignments we've always given, have students write essays. I think of some assignments that I used to give, like a cause and effect essay on the causes of World War II. Students can easily plug that into ChatGPT and get a very reasonable response in just a few seconds. And they could ask ChatGPT to write it like an average 10th grader and give you a couple of errors in it, a couple of spelling errors and a run-on sentence. And it would not be detectable by an AI detector either. And I can tell you that students can go on TikTok and search for ways to be AI detectors, and they will find hundreds of videos that tell them how to do it, and they all work. And so we need to instead think about how can we reformulate our assignments so that they're more AI resistant. And an added benefit of that is those assignments are going to promote higher order thinking. And so evaluating the process, submitting outlines, drafts, notes that they've taken to demonstrate that they actually did the work, kind of like math teachers have been doing since the 80s, making people show their work, or since forever, viewing the document history in Google Docs, things like that, incorporating personal experiences, having them relate personal anecdotes or experiences, engaging in classroom discussions and activities that demonstrate their learning live and in person, oral presentations, debates, discussions, multimedia projects, artistic representations, evaluating the speculative elements. And so as an example, the example I gave earlier about a cause and effect essay of World War II, a good way to do that and make it more higher order thinking would be to say to them instead is, imagine if the Axis powers had won World War II, how would your life today be different? You have to name at least 3 specific things you do every day that would be different if the Axis powers had won. Now that, even if they do go to AI and they learn about the Axis powers and they learn about what they stood for, if they have to evaluate it to their own life, they're going to incorporate a lot more higher order thinking skills into that process. It's going to be a better assignment all the way around, but it's going to be one that they're going to have more difficulty doing with AI. So in the interim, before we get to the point where we're using students AI in the classroom, I recommend you encourage, you explore that a little more on how you can make your current assignments more AI resistant. And there's a great tool in Magic School AI that does that you can just plug in your current assignment and it will give you 3 options that are AI resistant. And then I've created a GPT that's shared in our guidelines. And you can see there that the progress is remarkable. And so if you compare that first version to the most recent version, less than 2 years apart, that first version looks like maybe they incorporated or hired Picasso to help them with it. And then this last version is super realistic. Looks like any boy that you might see down the street. Feels like you could feel the stubble on his face. And so that is how much this technology has improved and how quickly it has improved. And I've also got a little video montage here that I have collapsed into a shorter version showing the progress of the video generators as well, AI video generators. And for some reason, 10 months ago, people were obsessed with doing AI videos of Will Smith eating spaghetti. But you can see that it's kind of ridiculous. Nobody would mistake any of those for real video. But there's a new tool now called Sora, which OpenAI is rolling out after the election, which you can create videos that are remarkably lifelike, using just a simple line of text. And I'm going to kind of skip ahead past that one to some of these others. But this is, again, this is just using a line of text and having this tool create video. And it is remarkable how realistic and lifelike it is. And so, again, that is both super, super cool and scary because of the implications. And in fact, it's already been used for a lot of negative things as well. So that's another example. I'll show a couple more and then we're going to move on. But just it's remarkable the progress in these tools. And I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. If it's going to stall out, then I will skip it. But that gives you an example of a prompt that was used. And so all of these AI generated images. Okay, and I will say, as I've already said, that Sora is waiting till after the election to roll this out. And you can imagine why, seeing those videos. But the Chinese company has created one just as good called Kling, Kling, which has already rolled out. Another company called Runway rolled out a new model called Runway 3 just a few weeks ago that will create very similar videos as well. And so that is something that all educators and students need to be aware of. And audio can also be emulated the same way. And you may have heard a few months ago, there was an AI generated deepfake of Joe Biden telling people not to bother to vote in the primaries. And that was a deepfake audio taken just a few seconds of his voice and then cloning it using a tool online. And this, I'm not going to play the video clip, but this happened a few weeks ago as well. And this was the adults in a school, unfortunately. This was a athletic director who was being investigated by his principal for misuse of funds. And in retaliation, he created a deepfake audio of his principal going on a very racist rant and saying very racist things. And it was very believable. And a lot of fallout from that. The principal got death threats. He got put on administrative leave while it was investigated. And after the investigation, they did determine that it was a deepfake audio. This person, an athletic director in a school, had taken a few seconds of the principal's voice and created this audio. And so this is something that is happening. It's not a hypothetical future scenario. And this video clip right here talks about another trend that's very concerning, which is people creating deepfake pornographic videos of women and girls across the country. And this got a lot of press because it happened to Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. And a lot of your students are going to know that already. If Taylor Swift does anything, students know about it. But it has also happened to Megan Thee Stallion, which is another person they'll recognize. But it has happened to real girls as well. In New Jersey, there was a big case last spring where it was a former student had taken pictures of former girls that he went to school with and created these deep fake pornographical images, or not just images, videos of them engaged in illicit sexual acts. And of course, it caused a lot of emotional fallout for them. But unfortunately, at the time, there was really no law against it. He wasn't breaking any law, which is really sad. He did get punished, but it was only because one of the girls was still a minor when he did it. And so he was punished under the laws protecting minors possessing explicit pornographic images of minors. And I found out actually last week that this happened in a high school in North Carolina last year as well. And so we've got to teach our students about that. What do they need? What do you need to know? They need to know that these things can be realistic. They can be mistaken for human generated. They need to know that they need to be a little more cautious. A lot of our students are really bad about oversharing and not maintaining any kind of privacy on their social media accounts, keeping them open so that just anybody can friend them, anybody can access their content. And so honestly, I'm cautious now about leaving voicemails on unknown numbers, returning calls. I'm cautious when somebody reaches out to me on LinkedIn and wants to join me on a video call, because there have been some incidences of people doing that and then using that video content. I'm cautious about sharing images and video online. I'm cautious about setting up my privacy on my social media accounts to be very restrictive. And we need to teach our students about some of those things as well. But we need to help our students understand the ethical, emotional, and legal implications of creating and distributing any kind of content, whether it's explicit or not. We've had other incidences of students taking teachers and administrators' images and creating just funny, silly videos. Even that is an invasion of privacy, and so they need to not be doing it. And we need to adjust our school policies to directly address deepfake cyberbullying, images, audio, and explicit content. I do want to say that there was a movement in Congress last week. The Senate unanimously passed the Defiance Act of 2024. And that act will, actually it was week before last, you can read about it here, but it will give victims of those kinds of things some legal recourse to ensure that the perpetrators are punished. And so that if it goes to the House and is passed in the House and will go to the president's desk, and hopefully very soon it will pass legislation. But I also want to point out this, because AIforeducation.io is a worldwide leader in helping educators adapt to the rapid advancement of AI. And they recently published a free lesson on their website, which anybody can use. And I feel like it should be mandatory for all teachers and middle school and high school students this year, because it goes in very deeply into what deepfakes are, what are the dangers of them, gives some good conversation questions around them. And it also gives several examples of current events that students will recognize where deepfake have been used. And so I would incorporate that into your beginning of your training in every middle school and high school. I feel like it's very important that we do that. But the best way to mitigate these bad things is AI is education. And so I am a huge component of AI literacy. I feel like everybody should be learning about AI before they're ready to learn with AI. And as I've already said, even though we're not sanctioning it for student use yet, that doesn't mean students are not using it and teachers are not using it. They are. Recent results, they're using it in much higher percentages than they previously were. And so I feel like as educators, we need to incorporate AI literacy this year, especially for our students closest to graduation. But all middle and high school students really need this, especially. And we need to eventually get it to that all students K-12 are getting AI literacy. And this definition from Digital Promise says that is the knowledge and skills to critically understand, use, and evaluate AI systems and tools to safely and ethically participate in an increasingly digital world. And so they break that down, understanding what AI is and what it's not, how it works, what are the potential benefits and risks, how to responsibly use the tools, and then and the only true way to know that is to get your hands on it and use it. And so I encourage you as teachers to do that as well. Always keep those risks in mind, always evaluate it carefully, but we do need to be using it to actually learn about it before we're trying to teach students about it. And always critically evaluating the output, always being that human in the loop. You need to always direct and oversee and evaluate anything that comes out of AI. And so build your own literacy, use it in line with your school policies, and be transparent when you use it, disclose the use of it. And you can see on several of my slides, I've got a little quote under it that I created this with this tool. And that's really all you have to do in most cases, is just explain how you used it, what tool you used and how you used it. And be aware of and mitigate the biases always. And so for students, this is just kind of a little recommended timeline. I do not advocate for PK5 students to learn with AI, even in teacher created bots. I don't think they have the ability to understand AI and to mitigate and evaluate bias that they need at that age, but they can still learn about it. And if we're using the K5, if we're using the computer science standards, if we're teaching them about digital citizenship and the digital learning standards and the portrait of the graduate, you're doing a lot already to prepare them for learning about AI. But they can also learn about AI in age appropriate ways. They can look at images of AI generated images and real images and compare and see if they can tell the difference, things like that. But in middle and high school, I do think that eventually we need to get to the point where students are learning with it. In middle school, that can only be with teacher created and monitored chatbots on tools that don't require them to create accounts, like Magic School AI, things like that. But again, we need to continue that other focus with an increased focus on media literacy and recognizing AI generated content. And in high school, I feel like they need to get to the point where they're actually learning with AI to prepare them for the world they're going into. And so my call to action, which I will end with today, is to begin infusing AI literacy in your high school classes if you teach high school. And then hopefully your district has a plan to incorporate that in middle school in the following year and then move on to elementary school, always in age appropriate ways over the coming years. And so I am going to then, I'm going to go ahead and move have a couple more slides. I just want to share the North Carolina guidelines with you if you have not seen it. We did some updates yesterday. It is a living document, so you always want to reference it using the official short link. Don't just save the PDF to your computer because it will change. But I also have a worksheet that I've linked at the bottom to kind of help you work through the guidelines. If you want to use that, then I encourage you to do so. And I thank you for your joining today. And I hope that what I've said is helpful to you. I hope you have a wonderful school year. And I encourage you to work on increasing your own AI literacy this school year. And I'm happy to help in any way that I can. Thank you.